have a 47-year-old teacher who likes steamy novels and even dabbles a bit with writing them when she's not playing pickleball. And we have the 26-year-old man that has the neck tattoo, who, and of course, we can't forget that there's a best friend who is in love with the teacher. What's gonna happen? You have to read and find out. Mhm. This is not a rom com. This is a train wreck, a slow moving train wreck. So, hi, I'm V. Welcome back to Socially Single. And today we're going to be looking past reality TV edits and discuss a little bit deeper some social commentary regarding Laura and Birkan. And of course, Michael, the friend. So let's get into it. So this is definitely part of my series where I kind of go over the couples from the whole 90 Day Before the 90 Days season. And we have the tell all that's going to be coming out. And so I wanted to just simply give my take on what we've seen from them this season before we get into hopefully what would be much more juicier details for the tell all. If Sean Robinson's allowed to do her job right, we will see. So let's get into it. This is a case study of settling and delusion wrapped into one. So we're gonna break down what I think is wrong with Laura and why Birkan just is he is just not who he think he is. He's not. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. So first off, background. Laura, 47 years old, she's a teacher. She used to be a very heavy set woman. She has lost all the weight, so kudos to her. And she did it by getting super active and she began playing a lot of pickleball and also has some awards and medals to boot. And she met friend Michael. Michael without an E, by the way. And they become very good friends. They're very good pickleball partners, so you don't want to screw with them on the court now. And they really established a strong friendship and bond. And so they came into their lives, each other lives, at a certain time. She was just getting out of her previous relationship when he met her. And I'm not sure if Michael was also in a relationship, but they met on the tip to where, like, hey, we're friends. And she wasn't really available, or more importantly, she was not emotionally available. And we really learned this from Michael, who was like, when I met her, so she wasn't available. So, of course, he had to get to know her as a friend. And then that kind of began to obviously shift a little bit. They do have this unused relationship that might not be typical, especially for people at their age, where you have a man and woman who are both heteronormative, excuse me, and um, and they're supposedly platonic, but the same token, they're spending, while they may not be having sex, there's intimacy involved in their relationship. They're watching movies in bed and on the couch, and she's always talking to him and asking about her day, and he heavily cares for her. He's really involved in her life, and Michael and Laura spend a lot of time together, enough to the point to where people have just automatically assumed, hey, that's your man, that's your woman. Like, they're like, y'all must be a couple. And I'm like, no, not really. And of course, because their connection, Laura definitely has some feelings for him. She gave him the chance to really define their connection prior to her trip to go see who will meet in a moment, Birkan, in Turkey. And Michael chose not to, pursue that. And it's interesting because when Michael was talking to his confessionals and his commentary, I don't necessarily not believe that Michael did not have feelings for Laura. I think that it's hard to spend that much time and have that much care in someone and not develop a certain level of feelings, or at least consider the thought. What I do think is that because Laura was already pursuing Birkan, and she might have talked about Birkan so much to where Michael was like, I don't have a really chance with this. And he did admit that he has insecurities because he does have a birth defect that is clear within his face, um, where he chooses to not get close to people and he's very scared of being vulnerable because of that. So therefore, his intention is to hold off and back off and to maybe stop things from getting in a certain place. That way he can protect his feelings from getting hurt. So we don't really know the trauma of Michael's life, but it's clear that he's been through some situations. And given that he is going up against his younger guy who, is ultimately really fitting into the novels. The steamy, smutty novels that I know Laura must read because, if you know, you know, that he just wasn't competition. And I do think Michael is, I don't know if it's narcissistic or confident, but I think that he is secure enough to know that if he's not the only option, then he just won't be an option. And then we'll get deeper into the Michael situation a bit later on. But that's the background. A lot of background I know for Laura and Michael, but let's talk about Birkan. Birkan is a nomad. He's couch surfing, no house, no car, no job. And he's talking with Laura, of course. He's all of 26 years old. And I call him the man with the neck tattoo. They really fit this fantasy novel that I think Laura was trying to really create as her storyline. And so he claims like older women. And, he is someone who is quite frankly, you think he's a Tunisian, right? There's a bit of superiority when it comes to women. There's some misogynistic ways. He wants to be controlling, and he doesn't want to be forced to do things he does not want to do. And so, but the reality is, you can't afford to really be that head of household that you really want to be because you're drowning in debt because you had some failed businesses. So you claimed for the pandemic and you was doing so well before the pandemic, but you lost three businesses and you can't seem to repeat that success. So we found out that as his big secret in this part of the situation, I'm just going to tell you out the rip that Beer Con is a gambler. He gambles for his sustenance to live. Laura, of course, has been sending him money in order for him to, of course, survive because he doesn't really make a whole lot. And sometimes he does well with gambling, sometimes he doesn't. Those who gamble and those who understand lifestyle, because I don't gamble, know that it could be mostly a net loss situation. But he said that he does well enough to do certain things, and so therefore, that of course ends up being its own issue in their relationship, of course. So as it relates to them getting together, and let's talk about their first meeting. When it comes to their first meeting at the airport, this was one of the most awkward meetings that I've ever seen. The reality is there is a 21-year difference between these two, and you can tell, right? Laura, I don't think Laura is an ugly woman at all. However, she definitely carries herself as someone who's in her 40s and a bit more mature. And Birkan looks like a college kid, like a broke college kid. And I think that when we see them together, they look weird. Just gonna be quite frank. They took the train back to where they were going to go, stay at the hotel room that he had kind of already helped set up. And they really didn't have all the conversation. It was like a lot of awkward silence where Laura was trying to um, spark something that DearCon had no sparks about. It was just definitely that awkward thing of like, okay, I've met this American and she's not what I really expected. So it's gonna take me some time to kind of get my head right that I'm gonna really follow through with this. That's what I took from this situation with Beer Con, if I'm being very frank. Okay, yeah, I can do this. I'll convince myself that I can do all of this. That's what I got from BeerCon. Now, Laura said that she's one of the things that connects them to each other is that they both like to read. They both like learning about things. She likes to read there's definitely a scenario where she wants to read her novels, and then he's reading some books or whatever, and he claims to be like this super deep thinker who just loves philosophy. And I've got to, let me tell you, I've got to share with you some of the things that this man has said. Like, for example, Laura's like, "Oh, the sunset is just so beautiful tonight. It's, it's really nice out there." He's like, "When darkness comes, the light shines up." What? Like, oh, okay, Birkan. What? I guess. It's just so up here. It just goes right over my head, right? And then, like, architecture is the art we live in. Right. That's what architecture. Ooh, I get it. You're young. You're really trying to like show that you're more than what you really are. And okay, man, with the neck tattoo, because remember, you're the fantasy character from her book, so you're really leaning heavily into this. You have the hairy chest and everything. So, or my favorite, Laura's at the first time they were walking around the beach, and she's like, "Oh my god, I'm just so tired," because of course she had a long international trip. And she's like, I'm ready to get to bed because, of course, she's ready to get, freaking icky with her hot, sexy man with the neck tattoo. And she's like, "No, I'm just like walking. I'm just tired. I'm a walking zombie right now, Birkan. I'm just so tired." And he's like, "Actually, you're not tired. The people are, as they have no idea where they are going." The fuck? Like, whew. Birkan, 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 Birkan. Just go gamble, Birkan. Don't. Okay, Birkan. Okay, okay. And Laura just finds this cute, and I guess, girl, if that floats your boat and gets your headlights turned on, do you go for it? Like, get your Birkan, as it relates to Michael, does not like Michael. And it's primarily because of how Laura has talked about Michael. And I think that this is a really good lesson that when we're talking to our significant others, our family and friends about our significant others, or vice versa, um, you control the narrative, right? So, for example, if I'm always talking about how my person is not, is just an ain't shit ass person, and they're always doing these things to me, then I can reasonably expect my friends to be like, "Why are you with this person? And you need to leave this person, and this person isn't necessarily good for you," right? So you control the narrative and the impression that those who are connected to you prior to whatever relationship we're in or you're trying to be in, you control how that person is presented to the other person. I definitely believe that this is something that Laura completely set up overall. She was hoping to create her own story. And as someone who has read his fair share of, erotica stories myself, I definitely could see that she wanted to really have something going on here where she's this single woman, no kids, and she's trying to get her groove back. She's feeling good about her because she's lost all this weight. While she was there, she even looked into, can she get the surgery to remove that extra flap off of her body because she's lost much weight relatively quickly. And of course she's being this super hot guy in her opinion, because I don't see it. This super hot guy who is exotic and who's gonna rock her world and really give her all the love that she wants. But even to her definition, I do think that she was looking to have fun with Birkan, but really wants to take Michael home to her parents. Now, let's talk about a little bit Laura's parents. Now, apparently they're definitely older. They are conservative, according to Laura. And they're super Catholic, and we only kind of get the feeling for a little bit when they're in the car. But it's clear that Laura and her parents have a you know relationship because her parents don't necessarily agree with her choices or her lifestyle. And I gotta say, I like Laura Mama because her mama. I don't know if she didn't care to listen to the producers. But anyway, Mama, I kind of like her mama because she has some bangers. Okay, she was like, you are in a relationship with an unknown entity. Like, you are in a relationship with an unknown entity. That's fucked up. She ain't wrong. But to call that man an unknown entity, that's crazy work. um, and she was like, "Did he say he loved you?" Yeah, he did. Red flag. Um, are you? Is he younger? You're older, and you're an older woman. That's not love. That is what you call infatuation. And she said, "I won't be convinced otherwise." And I was like, "Damn." Your mama is judging the hell out of you with these cameras. Did she forget the cameras on the window? Like, damn. It's clear. Okay, Laura, you, mama and daddy, listen, they can be wherever they want to be, but them being wrong was not it. And we see how right they were the more this train wreck goes. Because clearly, mama, you're selling yourself short, and you're selling. And she's like, don't do that. And I would think that Laura definitely is doing that. But at the same time, is she selling, or is this Laura? Is this Laura? Is this really who Laura is? Right? Like because sometimes how you want so much more for somebody else, and you and of course now we have so many people going, I deserve this, I deserve that, and the question is, do you really like? Yes. Like if I'm being on a superficial level, everyone deserves to have a solid, good person that's meant for them in their lives. On the same token, are you leading a lifestyle, or are you holding yourself accountable in a way in which you will attract the kind of caliber of person that you're claiming that you deserve? And are you making decisions that would be proactively leading you to such a situation with the right person? So, I don't know if Laura is settling. I think Laura is being specific as to what she really wants, and she wants something a bit more. She wants something that's not vanilla. Let's call a thing a thing. She don't want vanilla no more. That's not what she really wants. She likes vanilla, and she knows what she can do with vanilla ice cream, but she don't want that. She wants butter pecan. Okay, she wants to try some butter pecan. She wants to try some, moose milk, or something like that. She wants a little edge, and that's what she's at this point in her life after what she apparently has gone through in the past from her failed relationships. So while we're in Turkey, we get to meet Birkan's friends, and we just he doesn't have a good relationship with his family. And honestly, I'm not surprised because Birkan is an asshole. And we don't get to we do learn a bit more about Birkan's life and his friends. I got to give them credit. They held him accountable, like, hey, have you told her about your issues? And he was not happy about that, but he did reveal to her his debt. He's 50 grand in debt, which, as we all know about American standards, not saying everyone is in debt, but depending on the kind of car you have, don't have a mortgage, don't go to college and get your degree, or in fact, even worse, don't get your degree. $50,000 debt is not the end of the world. However, it is still a significant portion of the money. Laura, of course, uses this as a way to judge him. And I don't know Laura's financial situation, but there are some people who are very, very high moral, like, like, oh my God, finances have to be X, Y, and Z, this, fourth, and the third, which totally get, and it's invalid, and it is definitely is not in is valid in so many ways. However, girl, this is a little bit different because you chose him, right? And so, and and you had an idea of his situation before you brought your ass over here. So I'm not sure what you were expecting. Like, oh my God, will he spend my money? He probably will if you let him. And and he just might not. I could be very wrong if they even get together and he gets over to the States. But you can't say you didn't know if something was to kind of happen. Like you don't get that privilege of playing dumb. So now back to Michael. So I said all that. 'Cause I went to a whole tangent, right? Laura set this thing up to where she had already kind of talked to Birkan about Michael, and I am in full belief that she expressed it that, oh, I have this best friend. He's really into me, but I love you. And of course you're better than him. So therefore, you don't have anything to worry about. But he's this. And also, I'm pretty confident that because according to her, she's like, me and Michael had this relationship this friendship, excuse me, that once the other person got into a relationship, we're going to have there's an expiration date to this friendship. I don't know how true that is. I think she was just saying that to help support the strengthening of her own efforts with being with Birkan. I think that was very manipulative to her to say to us as an audience, because I don't believe that at all whatsoever. But Birkan image and thoughts of Michael was from the words and impression that Laura gave to him. Right. And of course, being a Tunisian man who, they're naturally a bit more possessive and a bit more jealous, in my opinion, because of their culture. There was no situation where he wasn't going to feel some type of way about his woman having a best friend who's a man, and not only a man, but he is heteronormative, he's heterosexual, excuse me, and possibly is into you. So of course, in his young mind, this is competition. So originally, Michael was supposed to actually come with them to Turkey at the very beginning, but Laura did not fully talk about that with Birkan and chose to go over there by herself with the agreement to Michael that he can, be tracking her and following her and that kind of stuff to make sure that she's always good at all times. But he was already prepared from the very beginning to come to Turkey. He was already like whenever you need me, I got you. I'm there. Ain't no thing but a chicken wing, baby. Like he was already gonna do that. And so when it comes to Laura, when she called and she wasn't really kind of getting along with Birkan because now there's this disagreement regarding his finances and his lifestyle. Um, He's like, I'm buying a ticket. I'm on the way. Qualis is kept. I think his ticket was already purchased. I think that was more of a producer move. I don't know. We don't know what Michael does for a living. We don't know much about his life directly aside from what I've already told you. But he's clearly in enough position to be able to buy a ticket to Turkey and to get there and be there and get him a hotel room and all kind of stuff. So kudos to Michael. And he's like, I'm a real friend. I got your back. Whatever it is I haven't resolved within me, it don't matter because I'm here for you. So we get there, he gets there, and it's interesting because Laura introduces Michael to Birkan. Birkan is like, I'm not really here for it. But he eventually kind of comes around and he does try to, make an effort to at the very least, greet Michael, not go out his way to make him feel necessarily welcome, but he did acknowledge his presence and greet him and kind of say, hey, welcome to Tunisia, and kind of have conversation. And Beer kind of just outright weird. I do think that Beer kind of has a little something loose up there in the head because he's talking about violence when he meets Michael, and I think this is like a way of trying to be this intimidating person to Michael. And keep in mind, Michael is Laura's age, so he's like, okay, like when you're older, especially when you're talking about men meeting men, this whole contest, when you're secure about yourself at a certain point, there's just petty games that a man ain't gonna play. period. And to Michael's credit, he was like, okay. Like, Michael's a bit square, right? Like, let's be honest, Michael's a bit square. I think he's a typical average white guy. He's not like, extra, but in me saying all of that, I do think that he's pretty secure enough with who he is enough to be able to hold his own with anybody. And like, like what you're doing doesn't really phase me. And if it did phase me, I can address it at that time. But I'm gonna let you do you because you need this more than I do, because I don't need it at all. So I'm gonna let you have it. And that's how that's really how their meeting went. And I think Laura was kind of secretly hoping for these two men to fight over her and to have this sort of conflict where she's forced to choose between the exotic love or the safe bet. That's truly what I was thinking that Laura was thinking about. So we move forward, and I want to mention a quick point really quickly that I forgot to mention. It was interesting because, of course, as we've seen time and time again, especially in these situations, the older American comes over to this country and they're just dying to get under the sheets, in between the sheets with their exotic love. And Birkan, that first night, I told you it's already awkward. She had kind of kept been hinting for hours at this point, like, I'm tired, let's go to bed. Like, oh my God. And aren't you tired, honey? Like, I just want to go to bed. And he's like, no, I'm good. And she's like, well, I'm gonna shower now. Don't you want to come? He's like, all right, well, go to bed. Have a good night. I'll see you in the morning. I'm gonna watch TV. I was like, real talk, that would make me feel some type of way. A little, in fact, it might even make me feel a little insecure that I'm meeting this person, we're supposed to be, like in love, and obviously there's this expectation of getting to business, and or at least testing the waters and really kind of trying out their equipment and all that. And he was like, I'm gonna sit here and watch TV. And he did. And of course, I think that we're talking about somebody who's a nomad. Like, he's couch surfing between his friends and has holes in his clothes. So I think that and then what he was saying, it was in my opinion, it was a big apartment. It definitely was nice, had a nice little view, and it was a large size, for sure. So it was super comfortable. And I definitely believe that, because he's probably not used to having alone time and having space to himself, that he just really wanted just to do him for a bit. And I do think that it took Birkan a while, because we don't talk about this either, about, when you have cameras up in your face, it's not always, I've never had that experience. I'm struggling having this camera in front of my face talking to you all about my thoughts. I am not a veteran to this. I'm not true to this. I'm just certainly new to all this. I think that there's some awkwardness there, because not only are you with this random person that you're meeting, but you also have this camera guy or team there. I don't know how many people are there to film these scenes at a time, but there could have possibly been some nervousness there or anxiety there that he was exhibiting. But nonetheless, they eventually do after the cameras are gone. I went to that first night, I think that second night maybe they may have went all the way. And even better, it was after she exposed her body and her stomach to the doctor that she was there to see, as part of her trip, in reference to considering surgery, that we don't really hear any more about, by the way, this whole season. So there's that. All right, so Michael is there. We get the point to where Michael and Birkan go out, right? Because Birkan has an issue with Michael. Michael was like, I'm just here to be supportive, whatever you need, I got you. It's clear he didn't really come with a agenda, it seems like. I think he was really like, I just want to meet the guy, I want to see how you're doing. Because if you're not good, then hey. And he was already set and prepared to fly back with her to the States. That's another reason why I do think that his trip was already pre-planned. It was just changed to the sense of, instead of him coming with her to Turkey, It was he's gonna come later on in the trip and then just fly back with her. So I think that when it's interesting when Birkan and Michael met, and and they actually met up alone without Laura. Birkan is doing this whole thing again where he's staking his claim, and he's like, like you're not here gonna take my woman. Laura's my woman, so I'm not gonna fight over her. And Birkan was like, sorry, and Michael was like, all right, like you can. I mean, you have her. Like if I wanted her, I could have had that hoe. Like that's really how Michael did it, for real, for real. As vanilla as Michael is, he was like, if I wanted her, I could have had her. I could have had her in any position I wanted to have her. I could have her right now. Okay, like yeah, you are not like I'm not your competition. I think your debt and your gambling is your competition, but it's I'm not your competition. She made a move on me and I rejected her. In fact, she still want me. Now, Michael did put on a bit for the cameras in front of Birkan. Do I think Michael has a thing for Lisa? Yes. Yes, I do. I think that Michael has feelings that he hasn't reconciled in himself about. I'm sorry, I said Lisa, I meant Laura. About Laura. But I do think that because she's has other antics going on, he's not solid. Excuse me, he's not solid in that feeling for her, feeling in those feelings for her enough to pursue that relationship. So I think he would rather keep the friendship strong and be in her life as a friend rather than ruin things in a relationship based off his own insecurities and maybe his own behaviors and characteristics. So I do think there is something there. And the reality is, I'm gonna be honest, I do think that Michael and Laura look better and would be a great couple, hands down. But hey, what do we know? This is not our lives, it's not my life, it's their lives. And based off the little snippet that we get from the tell-all, I hope, I keep saying this, if they just let Sean Robinson do her job, like I think she knows how to do her job right, we are going to get some additional juicy details regarding this whole dynamic that we're not getting filled in throughout the season. So Michael makes it clear that, hey, I'm not into Lisa, I'm not into Laura. I keep saying Lisa. I'm not into Laura like that, and she's yours. And of course, Beer Connor's like, you know what? I believe him. I believe him because Michael's sunned. He's sunned Birkan. What does that mean? He put Birkan in his place in a way in which an older man would put a young man in his place. Plain and simple. There's a demeanor that you have, there's a tone of voice in which you use, and there's a stance that you have that says that I mean business. And so all this that you're doing, it's not necessary. It don't faze me, right? And so I think that he definitely signed Michael and made it clear that I'm not your there is no competition. And Michael has already kind of said in the confession that he already sees a little bit, he kind of sees Birkan as an inferior person anyway. He doesn't think Birkan is good for Lisa regardless. I mean, good for Laura. Forgive me, y'all. I keep saying Lisa. Two syllable L names keep getting messed up. But like he doesn't see it for Birkan, right? So he doesn't that's not where his insecurities lie, especially as it relates to Laura. So from that point on, Birkan is like, okay, cool, I'm fine with Michael. Like this is on you. My problem is not with Laura. And when I tell you when he found out what he found out from Michael, I'm referring to Birkan now, and he was really upset that Laura was not forthcoming, that she made a move on Michael, not the other way around. Now, I'll be honest, I don't think that that was. Normally, I would be like, that's not really his business. Like, Lisa said, Laura, God, you know who. Laura, I definitely think because of the dynamic that Michael was introduced in this relationship, should have probably have been more transparent about things, even to the point of, hey, I have feelings for Michael, And had you not been in my life, I probably would be trying to pursue Michael. If I'm being honest with you, there's a world where I would try to be with Michael, even if it didn't work out. I think that in this scenario, that should have been a thing, but that tells me that there was ulterior motives on her part to make it seem like it was something else when it was not. So when Michael messed up her actions and she tried to confront Michael about like, why did you tell him this? He thought it's like, well, why wouldn't I tell him? He deserves to know. And I'm not going to sit here and lie for you just so you can sit here and have this fantasy novel on my behalf. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I like you. I love you. And I care for you. But that's not. That doesn't come along with that. We won't be doing this with lies because it doesn't serve me to lie to him. And I don't see how it serves you. So therefore, I'm just really not going to move forward with it. Now, the way that he did her though, she asked him. She was like, her and Birkan got into discussion because he's upset that she didn't tell him about it and all that. And he's like, he's feeling some type of way that, Michael told him the truth and Laura did not. So she said, well, do you need time? Do you want to talk about it? He's like, no, I need time to myself. And she introduces the element of, so you don't want me to come out to the apartment? He's like, no, not tonight. There is no way in hell that I travel across the world or somewhere else, wherever the hell Tunisia is, um, and I don't stay in the accommodation at which I paid for. There's no way in hell. And they have multiple rooms in that bitch. So she gets a hotel room at the same hotel as Michael. And no new clothes, no new bra, no new panties, nothing. No toiletries, and decides to stay there like I'm a gift in space. Bitch, you out your mind. You got your goddamn mind. There's no way in hell. There's no way in hell. I'll do you one better. For someone who claims to be such a high moral financial whiz, that was poor financial acumen on your part. If anything, I would have had my ass in the hotel room with Michael. If, and that is a very slim chance. Like I'm just so tired. Michael had two beds in his room. Michael, this ain't the first time we slept together. Move your ass over. Since it is what it is not, I ain't finna get me a separate room. Like I remember, she has the problem with Michael, so I guess. But there's no way in hell. There's just no. I guess I'm coming back to the apartment. We don't got to talk, but I guess you don't have to go ass on the couch. Like you did the very first night watching TV. Ain't you used to the couch? All right then, get your ass on that couch. You ain't got to talk to me, but you won't. But I know where I'm going to be, freshly showered in my sleepwear in the bed in which I paid for it, in this accommodation in which my money was used to procure. That's what I do. Now, where you choose to be to get your peace and your time, that is completely up to you because you are grown. Okay? But as it relates to where I'm going to be comfortable in me. You can just deal with your problems, and we can talk tomorrow. Just that simple. Laura used a fool. Use a fool, and because he already pegged you to be a fool, he ended up playing a game on you and winning. And he ended up manipulating you to the point where you're like, he's like, I'll do you even one better. You ain't even gotta cut off Michael. Just change that weird shit. Birkan got exactly what he wanted, and when you ask the question, how is it that these guys like this could seemingly kind of be getting shit and getting chances? We are seeing in real time of how they do it because he ended up playing a game on her and she fell for it. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. So they end, a little bit after that. Not much else really happened before them. She didn't really meet his family because he has a consensual relationship with his family, which I would always question, especially, I hate to say this, when it comes to other cultures. I think that from the show, I have seen so many good examples of, not all of them, but usually, in my opinion, the person, the non-American they view family and their culture a bit more differently, and they have a lot more intimate, relying or dependent relationships with each other, given maybe their situations. So I always find it interesting when we don't get to really meet the family. And in his case, he doesn't. He claims to not have a relationship with his family, and I really wonder why. Like what? Like I wonder why. What went wrong? But based on what we have seen from Birkan and his narcissist attitude and his seemingly alleged ways of superiority over others, I'm not surprised because I wouldn't want to fuck with him either. Plain and simple. Anyway, y'all, what do y'all think? Like, should Laura, what do we want to see from the tell-all? Like, what do we think is going to happen between these three? Right? I'm going to take these three because we have two elements. We have Laura and Michael, and we have Laura and Birkan. And I'm interested to see how she looks. We had a snippet to tell all, like I said, and I'll be honest, I don't think what Laura was wearing looks very flattering for her, but I could be wrong because maybe I'll see it from a different angle, but it just some of them outfits just don't hit, Laura. It don't hit. You have other things to figure out before you start figuring out your outfit. So you know what? I get it. I understand. Anywho, I will totally appreciate you all liking and subscribing. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care. Put your comments down below.